Welcome to the Property Nomads Podcast. We're edging closer towards episode 200. Today is going to be absolutely fantastic. We've got an awesome guest for you. Get your pens and papers at the ready, and unless you're driving, then take notes when you get home. You're going to want to take a lot of notes about this. Today's guest is an expert in negotiating. Is well known for having written the #1 Amazon bestseller Win-Win, along with hosting the Negotiators podcast. And Derek Arden, who is our guest, has also studied negotiation at Harvard Business School, got an excellent background, and is going to be handing out loads of hints, tips, and tricks to help you make more money in your business, in your life, all through negotiation. Derek, thank you for your time today.
Robert, great pleasure. Thanks for inviting me to your podcast. I nearly made 200 then.
nearly. I think it's episode 198, something along those lines. But anyway,
okay,
that's not overly important. But I would say, let's start at the start. Yes, you're well known for a lot of things you've done in terms of negotiation. But how did you get into that field of work in the first place?
Well, I was working for an international bank, and I was responsible for the retailers sector, not the retail sector, the actual retailers that sold all over the world food, basically the grocery sector and the clothing sector. And I was at Tesco's, and I shouldn't mention their name, but it was so long ago, it doesn't matter. And I got thrown out of their offices in Cheshunt for not reducing my price on a £1 million contract. And I was sitting on Cheshunt Station, pondering how I was going to handle this and take it forward. And I was just thinking to myself, well, most people and most of your listeners think they're pretty good negotiators, but how good is good enough? And I am clearly not good enough when I'm dealing with professionals and people that have studied the subjects. So by the time I got to Liverpool Street Station on the rail on the eastern region, or whatever they call it, I decided to go into Waterstones in London and buy as many books on negotiation as I could get my hands on. I got picked up one called Everything is Negotiable by an Englishman called, a Scotsman actually, called Gavin Kennedy. And I thought, Everything is Negotiable. That's an interesting title for a start. Most people don't think everything's negotiable. Well, of course it is. It depends how you go about it and how you ask. And I started reading the book on the train back to Guildford. And I thought, wow, I didn't really get that. I didn't really know that. And it's called unconscious incompetence in psychology. You don't know what you don't know. And so I started studying the subject, and I started getting better at the way I was dealing with the clients. I started getting better at spotting negotiating tactics when people were using tactics on me. Started studying psychology, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and the issues that went around with that, the art and science of excellence. And then I persuaded Barclays to pay for me to go to Harvard for a week and study under a guy called Bill Urey. Now, Bill Urey wrote the book called Getting to Yes, which is the worldwide seminal book on negotiating, about win-win. I win for me and a win for you. And at that stage, I never for once dreamt that I would be publishing a book a few years later. And of course I was. And that book was called Win-Win, How to Get a Winning Result from Persuasive Negotiations. So while all this was going on, I was doing a bit of teaching, doing a bit of speaking on the subject, learning more and more about it. And of course, if you teach something or speak on something, you learn more about the subject than sitting in the audience, because you've got to present and show people exactly how to do it. So while this was going on, I was learning, and I thought, well, I was wondering what I was going to do after I left Barclays, the bank I worked for, and I thought, this is it. This is it. I'm going to teach. I always liked teaching and presenting and speaking. I was always pretty good at it. So I went off to the States and studied NLP, and I studied professional speaking. And that's how it all happened. And it grew. And it's grown into a worldwide speaking business. It's grown into having a lot of fun. It's growing into being a consultant for various businesses. I'm helping a business negotiate a really difficult insurance claim at the moment. I helped a pension fund, and that's what I do. I help people, I help your listeners just up the game, just be that 1% better. And of course, what's the difference that makes the difference? It's probably just 1% in a situation, understanding a tactic, reading the body language, understanding the art science of influencing and what works under the level of our conscious mind, and all those tips and tricks that are being used on everyone. So that's a bit about me, but it's probably better that we get into some of the tips and techniques for the people listening to the podcast. And they're not techniques. You're not trying to technique people. What you're trying to do is just understand the psychology of what's going on behind the scenes and get the best deal possible for yourself. But on the other hand, also making sure it's a win-win deal. Because I know some of your people listening to this are property investors. I mean, it's no good getting a property at the rock bottom price and finding that you've hacked off the seller to such a degree that they've removed all the light bulbs and the light fittings and things like that. You actually want a win-win deal. And if you treat people badly, they tend to treat you badly as well. So treat people properly, respectfully, pay a good price, a fair price, but not too much. So that's the story, Robert.
Fascinating start. As you said, just before we go into, looking at all these tips and ways to develop win-win situations, if you were to reflect back on that meeting at Tesco's and getting kicked out, very quickly, what would you go back and tell yourself?
Wow, that's an interesting question. One that I've never been asked before. I mean, I think that was a seminal meeting for me. That was a really wake-up call. That's when you get a bit hot and sweaty, and hope you're wearing a white shirt like I'm wearing now, so you don't show your sweaty armpits and things like that, and a bit of sweat on your brow. Oh no, I think that was great. I mean, perhaps I should have learned about the subject before, but there's life-changing moments that we all have, and those life-changing moments are when actually you learn the most. When we're at our lowest, sitting on Chestnut Station, that's when you kind of get a light bulb moment. So everybody gets light bulb moments. The real trick in life is to do something about it and take action, and realize that you don't know enough. And you never know enough, do you? We're lifelong learners, and the people that listen to this podcast, I'm sure, are also lifelong learners, and lifelong learners know we're always learning. So yeah, I should have known more about negotiation before then, but that was a wake-up call for me. And if listening to this, there's a wake-up call for people, then it's a question of going out and buying one of the thousands of books on negotiation, or listening to the podcasts, or even buying my book, Win-Win. But it's best not to publicize your own book because people think that you're bragging.
Yeah, I know that feeling, having appeared on other people's podcasts and being an author myself. Okay, let's go on into property then. Let's try and give as much practical information as we can in this episode. Okay. Where do you see? I mean, I guess the key question, or the question I have that springs to my mind, is where do you see people going wrong when they're trying to negotiate? Let's say you've viewed a house. Let's try and relate to property. You viewed a house in an area. It's not in a great condition, not the worst thing in the world, and you've then got to go and deal with an estate agent, which most investors don't overly enjoy doing, but you've still got to create that win-win situation. Where would you say, if you're in that situation, what are people doing that isn't the right thing to do?
Well, the first thing that came to mind there is preparation. And this comes in anything, whether it's a house or whatever, actually doing the research, doing the preparation. Now, that's a lot easier now, isn't it, with Zoopla and Rightmove and all that to get the information. But often people don't go and look. They don't actually look and walk. I'm just giving you some examples on property, and I'm sure most of your people do, but it's still about preparation. So what would I be doing? I might stand outside the house for a little while and watch who's going up and down, what the neighbours are like, what sort of traffic's in the road. Is it a rough area? Now, you should know this, but there's nothing like using your eyes and just standing there for 15 minutes or walking up and down the road, getting a feel for it, a sense of what's going on. I would walk round. I'd be looking at see if there was any cracks. I don't need a surveyor to tell me, you know, that there's subsidence. Having a walk round. Does the roof look okay? Does it fit? Does it look structured? Good common sense things that, to be honest, most people don't do. You know, they think, oh yeah, that'd be a good investment. That'd be good to go in my portfolio. I'll make an offer on that. I'll make a ridiculously low offer or whatever. They think that's negotiating. Well, that could be stupid, because that would just, if it just hacks the person off and they say, I don't like that person, they're just trying to lowball me and make a quick buck. You've got that emotional resistance at that point. So I don't recommend that. Then I would build rapport with the estate agent. Now, I know you said that everyone's got that feeling about estate agents, haven't they, for some reason? But I know some really good, really nice, really professional estate agents as well, and you can tell that. And on my podcasts, my Monday Night Live interview shows, we're always talking about interpersonal skills and how you connect with people and how you build rapport and how you mirror and match their body language. And, you know, you walk into the estate agent's office, let's say, and obviously it's better to be eyeball to eyeball if they're local, and be as much like them as possible. And you can have a look round in the office and see what you can see. Is there anything to connect, build rapport, signs of football team he supports, or something that she likes, a picture of a dog on the desk, and things like this, where you can connect very quickly with people. You ask me what people don't do. People don't spend time on that. They go straight in with their own agenda, focus. And if you can help other people get what they want, then you can get what you want. And what does an estate agent want? They want a simple sale to somebody they like, where it's going to go through nice and easily. If there's a mortgage, it's easy to get. Can they make a little bit of money on the mortgage? Can they make a few extras? And can they satisfy their client? And what do they want? Well, they want their fees paid, don't they? So what I'm saying here is, in any situation, you need to put yourself in the other person's shoes. What's on their agenda? What are they looking for? What do they want? And the only way we find that out is by talking to them, asking questions, keeping our eyes and ears open, which is called sensory acuity in neurolinguistics. You know, the average person looks without seeing, listens without hearing, senses without understanding what's going on. So we talked about two things there: preparation, building rapport with the estate agent. You might also want to build rapport, if you can, with the seller, because the seller's the ultimate person that's going to sell it to you. And frankly, if they don't like you, and that's another mistake people make, they're kind of arrogant when they look around the house. And we've had people in our houses, oh, I don't like the wallpaper there. In the old days when people did have wallpaper, and then when you think about it, you know, I might have put the wallpaper up. So if I chose the wallpaper and somebody says they don't like it, they got an instant mismatch. How stupid's that? And then, of course, asking really good questions. And most people think they ask really good questions, but they don't. You know, things like, how long have you lived here? Why are you selling it? What are the neighbours like? And then looking for the body language answers rather than the physical answers, because it's 5 times more difficult to lie with body language than it is with the words. So looking at how people are reacting. So if you ask me a question, and for people listening to this, I'm now going to move back and fold my arms as I answer it. That's a pretty negative answer, because they have moved back. When people move forward, they're interested. When they move back, they're not interested, or telling fibs, lies, or whatever. Folding your arms, defending your heart, which is what the arms over the tends to signify. It might mean they're cold, but if you just ask me a question, I move back and fold my arms. That's pretty stone cold bonker. I'm on the defensive. Why am I on the defensive? Because I might not be telling you the truth. So picking up all these signals, asking good questions, and then listening to the answers. And when they say, well, yeah, and the neighbours are good people. Well, you know, you notice the hesitation in my voice there. That's giving you a bit of a clue. So, you know, stand outside. I mean, I've gone back after I've made an offer on a property, and I've been wondering about it, had a bit of a gut feel, is it's the right thing to do. So just stood outside, wandered around the back, wandered up and down the road, so that I get a better sense of whether it was a good deal or not. I mean, I've heard so many stories of people buying properties without even looking. Heard a story about a guy who bought 2 properties in Cyprus without flying to Cyprus to look at them. How daft's that? When he found out that after he bought them, of course, he found out they're under 2 great big electricity pylons, and they weren't as near to the beach as the plans had said. I know, you can laugh at this, but these things happen. These things happen. They really do, because as soon as people think they're on a winner, as soon as they think that they're getting a real bargain, suddenly their brain clicks in, I don't want to miss out on this, and greed comes into it, and they fall for all sorts of things. You've got to stand back. One of the things in negotiation is to take a time out, take a break, and think it through. The other thing I'd say to the people listening to this is, we don't say lightly sleep on it. People haven't been saying sleep on decisions for that many years, back into the dark ages of Adam and Eve, because sleeping on it lets the brain think things through. The brain never goes to sleep. It gives the brain a chance to think it through. And that's why we wake up in the morning with a funny feeling about something, or we might be in the shower and we get an idea. And that's often why salespeople, the snake oil type of salespeople, don't want people to sleep on it. They want them to sign here, and might say to you, well, we got other people interested. If you don't sign now, you're going to miss out on this golden opportunity. Well, there's no such thing as a free lunch, and that was John Ruskin said that in the 19th century, the famous industrialist. And there isn't anything, and it's better to lose a golden opportunity, which might not be, and move on to something else than, as my friend did in Cyprus, lose a packet on buying a pub. So what did we talk about there? Preparation, watching the body language, asking good questions, listening. Probably need to move on to the psychology of negotiating tactics. Well, there's quite a lot of tactics, and I've written extensively about them. But if we picked out just a few, one of them is good guy, bad guy linked to higher authority. So there's 2 tactics there. So if you're talking to the client or you're talking to the estate agent, you want them to like you. You want them to be the good guy. So if you were the estate agent, Robert, I might say to you, well, Robert, I've been thinking about this a lot. You've done a great job showing me around, and but at that price, it's going to be difficult to get that through my business partner, difficult to get that through my wife, difficult to get through my life partner. And that's the higher authority, the person that's not there, or the committee if it's a bigger company, or the board of directors if it's a big company. And they're the bad guys. So they're the anonymous bad guys that no one can get at. And then I'd say, well, if you could persuade the seller to move the price by 5%, or we might even say 5.5%, because funny numbers make people have the feeling it's realistic and been carefully calculated. If you say 10%, it's too much of a round number. So it's better to have an odd number, known as verisimilitude, having the appearance of reason. Then I think I could persuade my partner to go for it. So again, there's good guy, bad guy linked to higher authority, 2 tactics. Third tactic is time. Time is one of the issues that persuades people to buy things. If you think about it, in shops, sale ends on Sunday. That's usually in a Magnet kitchen shop. In a Dreams bed shop, sale ends on Tuesday, because the sales start on the following Thursday again. But it's to put pressure on people. In the Northern Ireland peace negotiations, they had to be agreed by Easter Sunday. In Afghanistan, which we probably shouldn't talk about at this point. You know, they were going to leave by today. Now that seems to be a bit of a mess up all round, but we won't talk about that. But time deadlines, beware of time deadlines, and time deadlines are used to persuade people to do a deal. 80% of the concessions in a negotiation generally comes in the last 20% of the negotiation time. Why is that? Because the heat and the pressure comes on as the deadline comes up. Tactic number 4, I want your listeners to think about is taking time outs. And what I mean by time out is taking a break, taking a breather, taking a walk around the block before you make your mind up, or even better, sleeping on it, or phone a friend, talk it through with someone. Because when we talk things through, we get rid of the emotions. People often make decisions emotionally when they should be making them emotionally and logically, you know, and asking themselves, does this make sense? You know, you're in Hull. Let's think if you were buying some of those, you know, those houses down by the docks or something on a deal. You just want to ask yourself, does this make sense? Are they going to go up? Are they going to go down? What's the redevelopments in the docks? Have I researched that, etc., etc., etc.? All those things that people don't think about. The next tactic I would mention is what I call the Columbo, and that's the dumb is smart routine. Comes from the the old days on Dave now, Columbo, Peter Falk, the actor, who always used to say just one more thing, or I just can't understand this, or can you run it past me again? The reason that's really powerful is if people are fibbing or lying, there's going to be a lot more hesitation the second time because they think they might have been caught out. And therefore you'll be watching or listening to the way they said it, how they said it, what the body language signals were that were coming with it. So remember Columbo, and you can always call the next morning. Just one more thing. I was thinking about this at 3 o'clock in the morning. How will this work? You know, these houses are built on a brownfield site. You know, yeah, I understand there's been a few issues. Where can I research that, etc. And then we come to the psychology of influence, which I gotta mention because Robert Cialdini, the psychologist from the university, you're nodding, so you know about this, and some of your listeners will. The most famous business psychologist said, you know, there's a few things you have to think about when you're negotiating, when you're influencing people. Number 1, does the person like you or not? What can you do to make sure they like you enough? Number 2, what can you give them to open yourself up, make yourself a bit more vulnerable, reciprocity? Number 3, do you look, sound like someone that could buy these properties? So thinking about how you dress, how you come across, etc. I've often been walked to my car by somebody because they wanted to see the type of car I drove. Actually, when I was in banking, there were 3. I think the word was crooks, but they all had Rolls Royces in the 1990s, and they were all using Rolls Royces to bamboozle people that they were really people of means, when actually they were all living on borrowed money, and they went bankrupt in the end. So, you know, we need to know that we need to look good ourselves, but on the other hand, we have to be careful about the snake oil salesperson that looks, you know, all full of BS. If I'm allowed to say BS. And then you know, back to social media. You know, what does our LinkedIn profile look like? Do we come across smartly when people look us up on LinkedIn, etc.? So they're my biggest tips. And in Win-Win, I've got a score sheet. The score sheet covers all of those issues we've just talked about. But the 2 underlying ones at the end are conflict and confidence. But both of them begin with con, don't they? So when you're negotiating, you're always going to have conflict. Always going to have conflict. So it's a question of how you deal with it. Using the good guy, bad guy routine and higher authority is a good way of softly using it, because you're not saying, well, I couldn't possibly pay that price. What you're saying is, I'd like to pay that price. But I'd never get that through my directors, my board, my partners, etc. What can you do to help me? So that's less conflict from what you're hearing, and confidence. We need to do our research, do our preparation, think about how we ask questions, think about how we connect with the other people, think about them as friends, colleagues, rather than adversaries. Because at the end of the day, if we want to win-win, they need to like us, and if they like us, then we'll be able to. It'll be much easier to influence and persuade them. So that's a quick run through my structure, my system of negotiating, which is what I cover.
Also, I mean, for the benefit of people listening to the podcast, I've literally just been nodding my head for the last 10-15 minutes listening to what you've been saying there, Derek. I would couple of things I would point out. I hate date stamping things, but by the time this comes out, of course, we've briefly spoken about moving out of Afghanistan. Of course, that was the end of August, so there's a bit of a date stamp there. Secondly, the word verisimilitude. I was reading The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham actually yesterday, and that word popped up. So oddly, it's a great word. I knew exactly what you meant when you said it. So I'd read it and Googled it yesterday. A great word. Love that. It's a fantastic word.
Well, I understand it was first used in Catch 22 in the novel Catch 22, and that's how it's. I had to look it up when I first heard it. So, but it sort of links quite nicely into having the look of razor. It's a good point you make about time date stamping it on Afghanistan, but there will always be issues like that. And I'm a great football fan. And of course, the transfer deadline comes up once every 6 months, and the worst deals are always done just before the transfer deadline, because the clubs and the players and the agents who make a fortune out of football are under pressure to do the deals, and they get the deals done at the last minute. So time is a massive issue.
Yeah, well, I try not to go down I'm a big football fan as well. Try not to go down the football route, but you do raise a very good point. I think if people were looking at the history of football deals done on transfer deadline day, as you quite rightly pointed out, not many of them are worked, because you're dealing with that time pressure. You're at the end, negotiations might be quite frantic, I imagine, and I don't really like football agents anyway, but hey ho.
There's a number of books on that. I was going to mention one last thing on that. I bought a property. The worst property deal I did is I bought a buy-to-let in Christchurch in Dorset, and I had a funny feeling about it. I kept asking loads of questions, and then the agent said, if you don't exchange contracts by tomorrow, we've got somebody else lined up who wants to exchange contracts. And guess what I did, Robert? I fell for the 3-card trick, and I exchanged contracts despite my gut feel. And the kitchen cabinets fell off the wall about 3 months later. The fridge went wrong. The heating went wrong. So I had to put all that right. And the capital gain on it is about 50% of what it should have been, because I overpaid for it and had to put things right. I've just kept it. I've kept it for 10 or 15 years. And actually, the yield's not much good either. And I'm going to sell it next year. I'm still going to make a profit, which was fine. But actually, I was closed on the time issue. Anyway, the thing about negotiating is we learn, and we have to learn from our mistakes, and we have to debrief our mistakes, and we have to move on, because we all make mistakes, and that's the way it is. But if we don't learn from them, then we're silly.
Totally agree. I think that's a very poignant point. We always should be seeking to learn. There's a couple of questions that spring to mind. Again, conscious of time, knowing that, again, about the half an hour sort of time frame is great for podcasting. But a question that did spring to mind is, how easy, when you're speaking to people, do you find that it's incredibly easy for people to be overcome by FOMO, fear of missing out? And then that's why, because they're not taking the time they need to take, that's why you see people making quite a lot of mistakes. Is that a fair thing for me to say?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it all links to the time issue, the time deadlines, the fear of missing out. There's something in our brain which says we don't want to miss out on things. That's why sale ends at 5 o'clock. I mean, it's a surprising statistic. But when you think about it, it's very reasonable that 80% of what we've got in our wardrobe we never wear because we bought it in a sale or we thought it was a good idea at the time, and we'd miss out if we didn't buy it there and then. And that seems to apply to men, women, and everybody else in the world. So that's odd. So yeah, fear of missing out. I think the time thing's probably moved on to saying, that's why it's such a powerful sales and negotiation tactic, and one that you shouldn't fall for. You should walk away, take a deep breath, and say, "There's plenty of fish in the sea. I can find another one." And there's something, something not right. It doesn't look right. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't, it doesn't even taste right. We say things like that, don't we? Going through all our senses when we get an intuitive feel that something wrong, and that's when we should walk. But we don't.
In those situations, I mean, we've not just myself, people listening, people watching this on YouTube as well. There's going to be times where people will go against their gut instinct. I think we've all done it. I think we can all hold our hands up to say we've all done it at some point. But if it gets to a scenario where you're just going to do a deal anyway, even though it's not a true win-win situation, even if it's not a win for yourself, but it's a win for the other person, would you walk away and still say that's a decent deal then, or not, because you've not created that win-win scenario?
Well, you never really know if it's a win-win, do you? You don't really know it's a win-win because you can't ask the other person, because they'll say, "No, I need a bit more off the price." I think you just have to feel it in your senses. Are they pleased but not too pleased? Gordon Roddick, the chief executive of Body Shop a number of years ago, said to me, "Derek, I think a really good negotiation is where both parties feel a little bit sore about it. They've been pushed to the limit, but on the other hand, it's a deal worth doing." And I thought about that. I think it's absolutely right. We want the best deal possible, don't we? We don't want to overpay for something, but on the other hand, we don't want to rip the other person off because they're naive, etc. So it's kind of a feel. It's a feel. Yeah. I hope I answered your question, but I think it was one of those questions that probably has no answer.
I'm here to merely ask questions and sit back and then listen to answers. That's my job, to try and squeeze out as much value as possible.
And if I may say so, you've done a great job today, because you've really you pinned me back a little bit with some of those questions and made me think carefully about the answers. So I thank you for that.
No problem at all. My final question, and I'm going to represent the autistic people out there, because I'm autistic as well. This is something that found this out a couple of years ago. So I've been sort of learning more about myself as well. And I know that being on the spectrum, things that I know that I'm not good at, but I need to improve on: eye contact, people skills. I'm just going to lay it out there. My people skills are definitely not the best. I guess my scenario is, I don't want to hide behind it every time and go, "Oh yeah, I'm autistic, I'm not good at this," because then you're training your brain to say you're not good at this. But for someone that's in my shoes, who's got the mentality of, well, it's always good to try, etc., but no, I might have a limitation here. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. What advice would you give me and other people that might not necessarily have the best people skills, but that are looking to learn because they've got that mindset?
Well, first of all, congratulations on your attitude for learning. I worry about labels like autism and things like that. And I worry about people who say, "I'm not very good at this and I'm not very good at that," because, as you rightly say, you're programming your brain to not be very good at it. Labels like Asperger's and autism didn't exist, did they, 50 years ago? It all came under some sort of label. People put a label on it. And now I was coaching a guy the other day, and he says, "Oh, well, that's because I'm autistic." And I thought, I didn't need to know that. I didn't know you were. I thought you were behaving slightly differently on the body language spectrum at the time. But he was going around using it as an excuse in a business scenario, and I told him to stop doing that. Keep it quiet, get yourself a mentor or a coach, strengthen what you can as far as you can, and go for it, because he was holding down a good job, but he was struggling in certain areas, which is why the chief executive had asked me to coach him, but she hadn't mentioned the fact that he was autistic, he started telling me and telling other people, using it as an excuse. And I don't think you need to do that. Everyone's got weaknesses. Everyone's got strengths. Use your strengths, work on your weaknesses, but don't put too much time into your weaknesses, because it's much better to keep improving your strengths, because we've all got strengths. So that's what I would say. I would lean on as many people to help you as possible. Don't think of it as a label. And if anyone's listening to this out there that's been labeled, labels are dangerous. You're a human person. You're a human being. You're different. Richard Branson's autistic. So where can you take it from there? Great question, and thanks for asking me that. I hope that was a good answer.
No, very, very useful. I do appreciate you taking time out to answer that. Thank you. The final question, absolute final question. Derek, how do people get hold of you? How do people find you?
Okay, well, I think the easiest way these days is on LinkedIn. I really do. I'm Derek Arden on LinkedIn. And the reason I say that is that I interviewed a guy called Graham Jones on the Monday Night Chat Show, and I'd love anyone to send me an email and come on as a guest to listen to the Monday Night Chat Show. Did you know up to 30% of emails get lost? That's the problem. So somebody could send me an email and it gets lost. So my email address is action@derekarden.co.uk, and my LinkedIn's Derek Arden. So if you use both of those, connect with me. I'll put you on my briefing list, my newsletter that goes out on a Monday. That will have the links to listen to me on a Monday night interviewing people. That will give you some exposure to me to see if you like me. Ideally, what I like doing best is speaking at a conference, mentoring, coaching people, because that's what I get a buzz out of. I'm a lifelong learner, I'm a lifelong educator, and I love helping people and being interviewed by people like you, Robert. So love to hear from anybody at any stage.
Wonderful stuff. And as Steve said, certainly from the YouTube video, of course, your book Win-Win, amongst other books as well. We'll put links to them in the show notes. Derek, thank you very much for your time today. I think that's incredibly informative for people watching, people listening, and they go out and start negotiating like a pro and increase income within your business. That's all I say to that.
Well, congratulations for what you're doing, Robert, and thanks so much for inviting me, and hope to come on your great podcast show again in a few months' time.
All the best.
Thank you.